Never before have members of the royal family been seen in the same way as we view celebrities.
A somber cloud has descended over Buckingham Palace as the royal family confirms a devastating development that has left the nation in disbelief. What was meant to be an ordinary day has turned into one of the darkest moments in recent royal history. Insiders revealed that senior members of the family were called for an emergency meeting, with tension and heartbreak filling every corridor of the palace. So, what could have happened to cause such turmoil behind royal walls? The day the palace fell silent. It began as a morning like any other, polished, calm, and perfectly choreographed. The kind of morning Buckingham Palace had repeated for generations. Sunlight spilled softly over the courtyard, catching the golden trim of its iron gates. Inside, the rhythm of routine began to unfold, footsteps echoing on marble floors, the clink of silver trays, the quiet murmur of polite greetings. Yet beneath the surface of that order, something felt off, subtle, almost invisible, but undeniably wrong. Phones began ringing earlier than usual. Scheduled meetings vanished without explanation. Senior aides, normally composed and unhurried, moved briskly through corridors, their voices low and tense. Conversations stopped abruptly when others approached. Even the air inside the palace carried an unfamiliar heaviness, like the charged stillness that comes before a storm. By mid-morning, unease had settled deep within the walls. Secretaries avoided eye contact. Attendants whispered instead of speaking. Memos once sent by email were hand-delivered in silence. Behind closed doors, the communications office buzzed with frantic calls and flashing screens. Outside, veteran royal reporters noticed it first. Security convoys appeared in odd formations. Couriers entered through old, unused gates. Guards shifted their posts with subtle precision. The palace's unshakable rhythm had fractured. By noon, the whispers escaped. Journalists used words like serious and unprecedented. Newsrooms filled with speculation, each rumor darker than the last. On social media, theories spread like wildfire, every post drawing millions of anxious eyes. Even the most seasoned correspondents admitted it. No one knew what was happening inside. Then suddenly, the world stopped. The royal family's official website went dark. Minutes later, it returned. Its homepage replaced by a single, chilling statement. Black text, white background. The royal crest above it is like a silent witness. A deeply distressing and heartbreaking development has occurred within the royal family. No names, no explanations, only grief and a plea for privacy. Across Britain, televisions cut to breaking news. Office chatter died mid-sentence. Outside the palace, as rain began to fall, a silent crowd gathered, waiting, mourning, and afraid to breathe. But what had shaken the monarchy so deeply? And could this tragedy mark the beginning of a new chapter or the end of an era? A nation holds its breath. Across the nation, daily life seemed to stop in its tracks. In busy shops, conversations froze mid-sentence as the news spread from one glowing phone screen to another. In classrooms, teachers faltered, searching for words as wide-eyed children asked questions they couldn't answer. Even in the smallest villages, people stepped outside, standing motionless beneath gray skies as the slow, mournful tolling of church bells began to echo across the land. Their sound carried over green hills and down rain-damp streets, heavy, distant, and heartbreakingly familiar. Britain had mourned before, but never like this. The sorrow felt immediate, raw, deeply personal. It wasn't just national grief, it was human grief. On social media, timelines flooded with emotion. Hashtags bearing royal names trended within minutes, uniting millions in disbelief. Photos of Prince William, Princess Kate, and their children filled feeds, each image surrounded by words of prayer, compassion, and shock. From celebrities and world leaders to shopkeepers and farmers, voices joined in a shared outpouring of heartbreak. The grief stretched far beyond Britain's borders. Across oceans, landmarks glowed in royal colors, and messages of sympathy arrived from every continent. The feeling of unity was unmistakable, the sadness universal. As dusk fell, the crowd outside Buckingham Palace grew denser. At first, they came quietly, unsure of what to do, yet pulled by something greater than themselves. Then came the candles, their flames trembling in the evening wind. Flowers soon blanketed the pavement, soft bursts of color against the stone, handwritten notes, some long, others, just a few lines, fluttered gently against the palace gates. A mother knelt with her young daughter, placing a single rose among hundreds. Elderly couples stood hand in hand, their faces etched with tears and memory. Behind the iron gates, the palace lights glowed faintly against the wet cobblestones, shimmering like fragile hope. The official statement revealed no details, only sorrow. Yet that was enough. The fortress had shown its heart, and, for the first time, in living memory, the monarchy and its people grieved together, not divided by crown or class, but united in heartbreak beneath the storm beyond the palace gates. But what loss could bring a kingdom to its knees in a single day? What truth was the palace holding back, one too heartbreaking for the world to hear all at once? A nation in silent mourning. The air was thick with sorrow, a blend of soft sobs, muted whispers, and the faint shuffle of feet upon rain-soaked stone. Cameras clicked gently, capturing faces streaked with tears and eyes clouded by disbelief. Across Britain, time itself seemed to slow. In quiet villages and bustling cities alike, televisions flickered in dim living rooms, while radios carried trembling voices through cafes, classrooms, and empty train stations. Teachers paused their lessons, struggling to explain what even they could not yet grasp. In shops and offices, strangers exchanged glances and whispered the same question. Have you heard? The nation hung suspended between shock and heartbreak, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what had been lost. By afternoon, a mournful sound rolled through the air, the tolling of bells. From London's grand cathedrals to small chapels, hidden in misty hills, the notes rang heavy and slow. No decree had summoned them. It was instinct, a shared act of mourning that crossed generations and class alike. People stepped out of their homes to listen, their umbrellas glistening under the drizzle, as the wind carried each note through cobbled streets and open fields. Each echo felt like a heartbeat, steady, fragile, human. Online, the world joined in. Social media turned into a tide of grief, filled with images of palace gates, the royal crest, and the family at the heart of loss. Hashtags bearing their names spread across continents. From New York to Nairobi, condolences poured in. Some offered prayers, others posted memories, while countless more simply wrote, "I can't believe it." Leaders, celebrities, and ordinary citizens united in sorrow, their voices forming a single global chorus of empathy. Outside Buckingham Palace, thousands gathered beneath a darkening sky. The air smelled of rain, candle wax, and roses. A little girl laid a single flower at the gate as her mother wept beside her. Elderly couples stood hand in hand, gazing up at the golden-lit windows, waiting for reassurance that would never come. As night fell, Buckingham Palace glowed softly, its light not of grandeur, but of grief and remembrance. So what truth lay behind those glowing windows? What loss had shaken the monarchy to its core and left a nation standing in the rain, waiting for answers that never came? Grief behind the gates. For centuries, the British monarchy had stood as a symbol of endurance, an institution built on grace, duty, and composure. But on this day, even its marble walls seemed fragile, its golden glow dimmed by sorrow. The palace, once a fortress of poise, now felt human. The silence that hung in the air said more than any statement could. The storm beyond the gates had come, not one of scandal or conflict, but of heartbreak. Inside Buckingham Palace, grief felt almost alive. It lingered in the air like mist, heavy and unrelenting. Those who had served the royal family for decades moved softly through the corridors, their whispers filled with disbelief. Staff who had seen the family through triumphs and tragedies wept quietly in corners. Even the guards, trained to show no emotion, stood with shoulders lowered and eyes fixed ahead, their composure cracked by mourning. In the early hours, an emergency meeting was held in one of the palace's private chambers. The chandeliers cast cold, silvery light over the gathered royals. Their faces were pale, drawn, and hollow. Advisors spoke in hushed tones, discussing what could be said to the public, how to guide a grieving nation, but no words could mend what had been broken. At the head of the table sat the king. For much of the meeting, he remained silent, his gaze lowered, his hands motionless. A lifetime spent mastering restraint had not prepared him for this. For once, he was not the monarch of a nation. He was a father consumed by loss. Those present would later say the room felt unbearably still, as though even the walls were grieving. Beside him, Queen Camilla rested her hand gently on his arm, a quiet act of comfort amid devastation. When the meeting ended, the royals drifted through marble corridors, their footsteps echoing softly in the emptiness. Duty, once their anchor, now felt hollow. Elsewhere, Prince William and Princess Kate moved quietly through the day. He, shattered but protective. She, steadfast and composed. At a window, they stood together, silhouettes against fading light, watching as condolences from around the world began to pour in. As the palace mourned in silence, one question lingered in every heart across Britain. How does a family bound by duty learn to grieve like the rest of us? The prince's breaking point. Messages of sympathy poured in from every corner of the world. Presidents, prime ministers, celebrities, and ordinary people shared their words of comfort. Yet, inside Buckingham Palace, time itself seemed to stop. The usual rhythm of life, the echo of footsteps, the clink of dishes, the soft hum of conversation had vanished. Meals went untouched. Curtains stayed drawn. Even the steady ticking of the great hall's clock felt painfully loud, marking each second of sorrow. Veteran staff whispered that in all their years of service, through weddings, jubilees, and national crises, they had never seen the palace so silent, so consumed by grief. As night settled over London, one by one, the grand lights of Buckingham Palace dimmed, until only a faint golden glow remained against the dark sky. Behind those walls, a family once seen as symbols of endurance could no longer hide behind ceremony. They were not monarchs that night nor figures of state. They were simply a father, a mother, and children mourning someone they loved. For Prince William, the tragedy was not just a test of duty. It was the moment when his calm facade began to fracture. Those close to him had seen the signs long before. His smile had grown restrained, his words quieter, his posture heavier. Yet, he continued every engagement, every handshake, carrying the invisible burden of expectation. But behind that composed image, something had begun to crack. When the devastating news broke, William retreated to his study at Adelaide Cottage, a quiet refuge filled with family memories. His phone rang endlessly with calls from advisors, dignitaries, and friends, but he answered none. Instead, he sat by the window, staring at the gardens where his children once played, trying to grasp a loss no crown could protect him from. When he finally faced the cameras that evening, his eyes were red, his expression hollow, no royal mask, no polished tone, just a grieving son. And in that moment, Britain saw its future king not as a monarch, but as a man broken by love and loss. But when duty demands strength again, will grief give way to resilience or reshape the crown forever? The King's Dilemma. Princess Kate stood beside Prince William, calm and composed, her quiet strength shining through the heavy air. Every so often, her hand brushed lightly against his, a fleeting touch, but one that seemed to steady him. Cameras flashed, reporters waited, yet for a moment the world stood still. Together, they stepped forward, their faces pale but resolute, the weight of sorrow unmistakable. William's voice trembled as he thanked the public for their compassion, every word deliberate, each pause filled with emotion. Several times he faltered, his gaze falling, his voice breaking, as though continuing was almost too painful. When he asked for privacy so his family could grieve, it wasn't the formal request of a royal, but the heartfelt plea of a husband and father trying to protect those he loved most. After the short address, the couple returned to Windsor, retreating behind closed doors where the world's gaze could no longer reach. Soon after, the palace confirmed that they would step back briefly from public duties. Inside their home, William spent the evening with his children, trying to keep life as normal as possible. Shared meals, bedtime stories, soft words of comfort. Yet beneath that calm, grief lingered. The boy who once walked behind his mother's coffin now faced another heartbreak, this time as a man burdened by both crown and fatherhood. To millions watching, he was no longer just the heir to the throne, but a son and a husband holding tightly to love as his last source of strength. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, another heart carried a different weight. For King Charles, the tragedy was both a national crisis and a deeply personal wound. The monarch who had spent a lifetime preparing to lead now found himself torn between duty and despair. Would his next words heal a grieving nation or reveal the pain no crown could ever conceal? The speech that stilled a nation. He sat alone at his desk, the golden glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the papers before him. Crumpled drafts lay scattered, each too formal, too distant. The words written by advisors sounded like those of a king, not the man he truly was. So with a trembling hand he began again, his own words this time. When he stopped, what remained was no longer regal or rehearsed. It was raw and human, the voice of a father trying to find meaning in unbearable loss. As night settled over London, the palace prepared for the broadcast. Cameras were wheeled into one of its oldest rooms, lined with gold frames and heavy velvet curtains. The king sat behind a polished wooden desk, dressed in black, his hands clasped tightly. Before the broadcast began, he closed his eyes. Those present said the silence was so thick it felt like grief itself had taken shape. Then, the red light blinked on. The king lifted his head and began to speak. His voice was soft, fragile, and deeply sincere. Gone was the formal rhythm of a royal address. Instead, he spoke from the heart. He thanked the nation for its compassion, acknowledged the shared pain, and admitted that even a king could not find words for such sorrow.
I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow.
We are all, in the end, human, he said quietly. That simple truth rippled across Britain, carried by the glow of television screens and radios. Families sat in silence. Strangers leaned closer in pubs and cafes. For the first time in generations, the distance between the crown and the people disappeared. He did not speak as a ruler, but as a man laid bare by grief. When the broadcast ended, there was no applause, only reflection and tears. Outside, candles flickered in the cold night air. King Charles's words did not erase the pain, but they transformed it, reminding the nation that true strength lies not in crowns or ceremony, but in compassion and the courage to show that even kings can break. As the candles burned low and the king's final words echoed across a grieving nation, one question lingered in every heart. When the crown grows heavy with sorrow, can compassion truly hold a monarchy together? The truth behind the tragedy. In the days after the heartbreaking announcement, the shock that had frozen the nation slowly shifted into something else: questions. People across Britain and around the world wanted to know what had really happened behind the tall, guarded gates of Buckingham Palace. The king's emotional address had comforted many, yet his silence afterward only deepened the mystery. In newsrooms, quiet speculation began. On social media, whispers turned into theories. The public's curiosity grew louder with every passing hour. Then, fragments of truth began to surface. The palace, after days of restraint, confirmed that the tragedy was not tied to scandal, politics, or power. It was something far more personal, a profound and private loss that had shaken the royal family to its core. This was not about image or ceremony. It was about grief, raw, human, and unavoidable. Those who had been near the family in the days before the news broke spoke of an air of exhaustion. Prince William, once the steady face of calm leadership, had seemed withdrawn. Princess Kate, known for her quiet strength and grace, had been unusually subdued. Courtiers described a tension that hung in the corridors, a heaviness that words could not explain. Behind the palace's polished image, a storm had been gathering for some time. For years, duty had pressed down on every royal shoulder. Every smile, every handshake, every wave had come at a cost. The expectations were relentless, and the boundaries between public service and private emotion had blurred beyond repair. When the truth was finally revealed, it was heartbreakingly simple, a personal tragedy that no title, crown, or ceremony could protect them from. Even the palace's most seasoned aides admitted the loss had changed everything. It revealed how fragile the balance between tradition and humanity truly was. The monarchy had always stood as a fortress of control and continuity, but beneath that gleaming surface, cracks had long been spreading. When the devastating event finally struck, those cracks split wide open, exposing not just the sorrow of a royal family, but the painful truth behind the crown's perfection. Can a monarchy built on poise and tradition survive when its deepest secret is simply being human? The nation in mourning. When the truth finally reached the public, Britain did not respond with outrage or gossip, but with compassion. The tragedy was too raw, too human to be treated as mere news. People saw themselves in the royal family's pain, parents who had lost, children who had grieved, siblings holding one another together through heartbreak. For once, the line between royalty and ordinary life disappeared. The realization struck deeply. Even those born to crowns are not immune to sorrow. As the palace continued to ask for privacy, one truth began to echo across the kingdom. The monarchy, for all its grandeur, was made of people. Titles, jewels, and centuries of ceremony could not shield them from the weight of grief. The tragedy's truth was not scandal or mystery, but something painfully familiar, a reminder that even in palaces, hearts can break. Across the United Kingdom, life slowed to reverent stillness. London's bustling streets around Buckingham Palace turned silent. Thousands gathered outside the gates, strangers united in loss. The air was heavy with the scent of roses and candle wax. Some wept softly, others stood in disbelief, staring at the dark windows that hid a family broken by grief. From Edinburgh to Cardiff, Belfast to London, candles flickered, bells tolled, and photographs of the royal family rested among flowers. In cathedrals and churches, people of every faith knelt side by side, praying, reflecting, and remembering that what binds a nation isn't power, but empathy. So, can love and unity heal what loss has shattered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more royal truths.